wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Hello and welcome back to Toronto Till I Die, the Toronto FC fan show. I'm Mike Newell, and were you missing yourself some TFC? Of course you were. You sickos, you're in this room. Now that Leagues Cup's over, you're getting all the TFC you can handle. We've got the league, we've got V's Cup coming up, lots to discuss here. A surprise smash and grab win in Houston over the weekend to kick off the last stretch of this season. We talk a little bit about tomorrow's V Cup semi against Forge FC at BMO Field. And of course, we will tee up DC United at home on the weekend. Another massive matches. As the gaffer likes to say, they're all cup finals now. All the cliches are coming out. 7 games left in the regular season. Get cliched heavy. Heard the word's going to be big on the cliches. So much to talk about. Let's bring in the co-host tonight, Jeffrey P. Nesker. And as you can see on my top left, maybe your right, depends on how things are oriented, the founder, editor of TFC Republic. If you don't have a subscription, why are you even watching this show? It's John Molinaro. John, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're pretty good. We're pretty good here. I mean, good vibes after a win on the weekend, though, at times a little heart-stopping watching that game because, let's be real, Houston probably could have put at least 4 by us, but somehow we were able to keep a clean sheet, which TFC haven't really been able to say that often in terms of these kind of performances. Before we get into all that, Jeff, how you doing, man? How was your weekend?
It was good. It was good. I was ready to go a few more weeks TFC free, if I'm being honest. You know, now that the Prem started, I think I was ready to have my heart broken by other clubs than TFC. But I'm pleased to see that it wasn't them this weekend. I did not expect that. I think that bodes for all of us, and I'm pleased to see that Casey figured her audio problem out because I didn't want to troubleshoot while we were live broadcasting. So beautiful. Everyone is happy. Will Mike wear his Forge jersey tomorrow from Richard Greenberg? Not on your life. I don't think that's even a possibility. If he didn't wear it to Tim Hortons Field, he's not wearing it to BMO. And I'm sorry to answer for you, Mikey. Are you going to wear your Forge kit tomorrow?
No. I don't know. I've answered this question many times. Though we will talk about the V's Cup and we will talk about Forge's form because it's actually been good. But before we get into that, of course, let's chat a little bit about Saturday. 1-0 win over Houston Dynamo. The first time TFC has won in Houston since since Preki was manager. Am I right?
Yeah, that was what
the manager
Dwayne Rollins tweeted out. Yeah,
so this would have been 2010, 2011, last time they won on the road. Yeah, and this would have been an old Robertson Stadium. This is when they were still playing in a college football stadium. So that's how long ago it was. And I do remember that because it was the D-Row Thunder Strike from a free kick that won us the game. What a memory to go down that lane. But before we get into the specifics, just want to get overall thoughts on the game because I think, the narrative for a lot of people coming out of this is going to be like smash and grab, like, oh my God, I can't believe this team won a game in which, I think Houston had like almost a 2xG and we had like 0.9. But yet we come out, we find a way to get 3 points on the road. Is that the narrative, or do we still need to have a conversation about, getting dominated on the road in the Texas heat? John, as the guest, I'll start with you.
I think it's a little bit of both, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think there's something to be said about, you can't sort of overstate how difficult it is to go to Texas in Houston in August and get a result like that. I mean, Houston is a tough team to play regardless, but to go down to Texas in that searing heat where it was, I believe, 33 degrees Celsius at kickoff.
Yeah.
That's not insignificant. I mean, to play in those kind of conditions, it's tough. So, you can certainly understand, why, and the Dynamo were used to it, and you can certainly understand why they sort of dominated, possession and really sort of pushed TFC onto the back foot. So, so that's understandable. But on the other hand, I think you have to give Toronto a little bit of credit for the way it managed the game, keeping things tight, not really committing egregious errors that would have led to sort of Houston scoring opportunities. Played smart football, played compact football, defended relatively well, and took the one scoring chance that they did produce really well. I mean, it was a fantastic free corner kick delivery by Federico Bernardeschi to the back post. And credit to Prince Owusu, who mired in a goal drought dating back to to May in MLS anyway.
Yeah.
Creating enough space for him to connect on the header that went into the back of the net. So yeah, I mean, look, I think there was some good fortune involved here too. I mean, Houston probably could have, as you said at the top, probably could have put 3 or 4 goals in, but for the fact that some poor finishing and Sean Johnson coming up with some timely saves and some key last ditch tackles, whether it be by Kevin Long or Henry Wingo, who I thought was sensational when he came off the bench. So there was a bit of luck there as well. But I think overall, you have to give Toronto credit for what was a very professional road performance in very difficult circumstances.
Jeff, thoughts?
Yeah. April 21st, 2018, 5-1, the Agarakeche special. I mean, that's become a shorthand, and I had a fun time talking about that when I did a hit on a Dynamo podcast prior to this game. It's become a shorthand playing in Houston in that heat with the turf, melting your cleats as sort of the away trap game for TFC. I had almost no faith going into this game, and then when I saw that Lorenzo Insigne magically found himself injured again, I had even less faith. But like John said, those 2 weeks actually were a good time off because it got Kevin Long kind of fit to play 90 again, and boy did we ever miss him. Mr. Clearances, I mean, he should have kick into row Z tattooed on one of his calves, right? Like, the man's insane for that when he's at full health. I thought Shane O'Neill looked great. I agree, Wingo looked great. Did we really only have one chance? I thought, if there was almost an opportunity for Owusu to double that header and score the exact same goal, were it not for some defending on Houston's side. And certainly I remember Etienne Jr. kind of muffing a clear chance.
Yeah, this was like half chances.
Yeah, I think we had a few more half chances than just that one thing there. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, that 3 points was unexpected. To start this run, 7 games left with 3 points in the bag on an away match gives us some margin for some of the games that we maybe predicted would be draws or outright losses. So there we go. It's in this Franken season, it's yet another example of you can't trust your eyes or anything on paper this year, because this team is going to surprise you for good or bad.
Yeah, it's crazy, this team. You don't know which TFC you're going to get, as Michael Singh likes to say. Mm-hmm. Are you getting early season TFC that had a lot of grit and showed a lot of fortitude and was able to come out with results? Or are we going to get the, as you said, the Franken TFC sort of from, mid-May?
Don't mince my words, Mikey. Yeah, I now say that that's our team. It's both. It's the question of which one we're going to get is moot, because our team is both. So, and then the last thing I was going to say is, man, did Latif and Dorsey want to score? Holy crap! The entire Dynamo were just playing into them, trying to get them points. I thought Latif had more murderized than Griffin did, like down the stretch, but they both really, really, really wanted to pot one against TFC, and I'm glad they didn't.
Well, hey, the goal came off Griffin Dorsey's back, so undercover agent Griffin Dorsey, thank you so much. But I mean, if you look at the stats here, I mean, they're a little nuts. I mean, you're looking at basically 70-30 possession in favor of the Dynamo.
Yikes.
The amount of passes, like they more than doubled the amount of passes. It's like 653 to 264. I mean, you're talking about a I don't want to call it a road performance, but you're talking about a team that kind of knew what they needed to do here. Is kind of sit back at a certain point and absorb, and try to hit them when you get these opportunities on set pieces. And they did just that. And like, is it the most entertaining, eye-pleasing football to watch? No. Does it sometimes put your heart in your throat? Yes. But I think we're going to get a lot of that down the stretch. These last 7 games. I think there's going to be a lot of that if you want to see this team make the playoffs. We're going to see a lot of that. John, I would just in terms of thinking about this team and how you're going to have to perform down the stretch. You lose Insigne again. I know that's another talking point from this game. Clearly not fit for this one. May play tomorrow. They may hold them to Saturday. But in terms of what you're hearing, what you've heard from the press conferences, was there sort of indication of this sort of knowing this ahead of time, or is this something that kind of popped up in training sort of before they took the flight to Houston?
No, this is very much something I got the sense that it came up this week, that he was held out of training on Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, Thursday as well. Get the sense from talking to John, it's not sort of anything serious, that this is just sort of something that's a little slight strain. It's not expected to keep him out for any length of time. As far as, this week, I don't know. I don't know that it'd be interesting to see what John does, whether he puts him straight back in the lineup tomorrow against Forge, or whether he, saves him, unless he absolutely has to bring him on for the last half an hour, just because DC is Saturday, and that's an important game as well. And really, TFC aren't in a position where they can afford to drop valuable points at home against a team like DC, who is one of the 7 teams that are trying to chase them down in the playoff race. So it's an interesting sort of juggling act that John has to do here. I don't know what I would do if I was him. Maybe, as I said, maybe
Cry.
Yeah, maybe you sort of hold off on Lorenzo and only use him unless you absolutely have to, because as I said, that game on Saturday looms absolutely large. And let's be honest, and this is no disrespect to Forge, who obviously won the first leg and are a dangerous side, but TFC has enough talent, one would think, that they should be able to win without Lorenzo.
Didn't we say this in June? Wasn't this the talk track in June?
Yeah. I mean, starting Lorenzo in the second round of this cup tie gives me highs, because I remember how effective he was in the first round of this cup tie. So, this is what would John do? I'm being serious. Cry. Like, protecting the guy made of glass is just one more wrinkle in his. There's no such thing as an unimportant game left, and that includes the Can Champ. That includes the run of this MLS regular season. Before I forget, here's 2 comments I wanted to bring up, and they're completely out of context now. Here's Smith's vids. Gutsy win for sure, but I'm the only one, Obi-Wan, who thinks that they maybe could have trained inside heated, maybe on turf to prepare. Maybe I'm just crazy. You're crazy. There's no preparing for BBV Compass Stadium or whatever the hell they're calling it now. That place is a house of horrors. It makes no sense. I mean, and it's also turf. And what was the daytime temperature that TFC Social put out? Like 40 something Celsius. Like, it was stupid. And sure, fine, time of kickoff, it's down to 33, but that like, there's a lot of concrete in that stadium that's going to trap heat, so you can't prepare for that. And then Turtz, once again, great comment. To be fair, broadcast said Houston was one of the top possession teams in the league behind only Galaxy. I remember that stat. I remember that infographic. Marky Delgado was on it, and I got such nostalgia for the possession heavy Greg Vanney team of old, because forgive me if I'm like, that was long ball TFC. I mean, that was like relegation fight in the Prem kind of, Big Sean coach TFC, old school, just 4-4-2 long ball kind of styles,
I think,
right?
Yeah, I was saying, we're going to have to maybe get used to a lot of that down the stretch, right? In terms of just, you're going to have to grind out some results, and they're not going to look pretty, and you're not going to get some free flowing football. Especially if your captain and your DP get yellow card accumulation suspensions.
Let's save
That's
that one
another
because
wrinkle into all this.
I'm gonna take you to task. I don't expect that kind of sort of keep it simple, stupid football from this team anymore, because we've seen them fade over the last three seasons, and we've seen that, like, the kind of lunk-headed adherence to tactics that weren't working. So it was kind of a surprise to see them go out on an away game in that environment and play a much simplified style of football that paid some dividends. Like, I was a little surprised to see it, actually, if I'm being honest.
Were you, John? I'm not super surprised. No.
Okay.
No, not at all. As I said,
Yeah.
I mean, Houston is a very difficult place to play. The Dynamo are a very difficult team to play just because of their possession stats and the way that they just sort of outpass, teams, and they make you sort of chase the game. So I think, again, if ever there was like a need for sort of keep it simple sort of performance and a professional effort on the road from TFC, I think this was it. I would have been very surprised if they kind of tried to open things up and go at Houston. I think that would have been a recipe for disaster, to be perfectly honest.
Agreed. And let's talk a little bit about sort of they get maligned a lot. So let's actually show a little bit of love and flowers to the back five here.
Absolutely.
Because I thought they did put in a shift in this game, and they had to. I mean, with 70% possession and 650 passes to deal with, yeah, you probably had to. But the back three of O'Neal, Long, and Rosted, I thought put in a really great performance, like in the sense that, like you said, they kind of kept things simple, right? They didn't overcomplicate a lot. They weren't trying to play out of the back all the time, though sometimes there were some like interesting attempts to try to play out of the back at times that turned into turnovers. But I think generally speaking, they kept everything in front of them. And in that way, they were able to, repel a lot of attacks and keep things to mostly half chances. Now, of course, when you hit the crossbar 2 or 3 times, it's not so much a half chance. But, generally speaking, there was a lot of bend, but no break in that line. And a lot of times, like even in this season, we've seen that this line can be broken. And once they're broken, it can get ugly. But they kept together, and that's an interesting thing to see. And I think one of the things also I noticed is just Kevin Long's communication with everybody is clear and very strong. Like and I thought this was probably one of his best games in terms of that aspect of his game. He was really, you could, on the broadcast, you could see him communicating with everybody at all times, even when guys were tiring, the heat was affecting them. Obviously, he kept them going. And that was, that's what you sign him for, right? And again, that's sort of that value for money spent kind of signing where it's not, killing your cap, but doing a lot in terms of being able to affect the team and in the back line. Just wanted to get maybe some words from you guys in terms of that defensive performance, specifically the back line.
Yeah, I thought it was Kevin Long's best performance in a TFC sort of uniform, like by bar none. I thought he was absolutely immense. I know Bernadeschi and Owusu kind of garnered the headlines for the goal, but for me, Kevin Long was man of the match. And when you think about all the tackles and clearances and interceptions that he made, he was just a defensive dynamo. I quite agree, Michael. I think the back three were solid. I mean, Sigurd Rosted is much maligned, but I thought he had a pretty decent game, as did Shane O'Neal. And they were, they got a lot of support. I mean, oftentimes it was a back five because, both Richie Larea and Federico Bernadeschi were dropping back, which made it hard to then sort of, go on the counterattack when they did win the possession. And I thought Debbie Flores put in a very solid shift, acting as that sort of defensive shield, in central midfield. So it was really kind of like a team effort in a lot of ways. But again, the back three, I thought they did a really good job. Again, rode their luck at sometimes. We're a bit fortunate at sometimes. It wasn't, 100%, fantastic. But I think overall it was relatively mistake-free. It was smart. And, that's what you need, again, when you're playing a team like the Dynamo, who play the way that they do in a place like Houston, which is, again, a very difficult place for opposing teams to come and visit.
Rosted really confused that commentary team. Like they were praising him, and then they were sort of not praising him, and then they were calling him out, and then he was like one of the highest rated in all the aggregate sites. So, what did you let's talk about?
Was not great. Let's just be real. That's a team that's
I mean,
not
are they
TFC
ever?
that well.
Are they ever? They just we were spoiled with our Homer commentary team. I don't think we'll like any of them. Thoughts on Rosted? Like, I thought he came out strong and then kind of faded, but considering the humidity, considering the responsibilities, that's to be expected. Nothing. I don't think he deserved the flowers that he was getting, but I don't think he deserved the ire either. I think he was pretty.
I don't know if he was again solid, like not spectacular. And like trust me, from center back perspective, solid but not spectacular is probably a good thing, right? Like in terms of just being able to do the job, right? And he made some key clearances, make some key interceptions at times. And I think again, like you almost have to think of the three of them together, because with Kevin Long sort of quarterbacking that, along with Sean Johnson as well. He's also a strong communicator at the back as well. You could see the team was stepping up at the right times, moving together as a back three, which is, again, we've seen this team be very disjointed in that, right? Like somebody stepping when they're not supposed to step, and then they leave space, and then you get broken apart, and then the floodgates open, right? I think this time they were very connected to each other, even as you said, John, Federico and Richie, as they were back so much. Just because of the nature of the way the Dynamo play. I thought that was really, I'll say it, I thought it was really impressive. I mean, again, for a game where you only had 30% possession, only passed it 250 times, like that's impressive, right? Like in terms of just being able to withstand all that pressure and keep a clean sheet, which is something that John Herdman talked about in preseason. He's talked about all season, that the importance of learning to keep clean sheets. Try saying that 3 times fast. Was important, and I think if anything, that's going to be a win that he'll take in his back pocket. And all the Herdisms, Jeff, you're going to get a lot of those over the next next week probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to pick up on something you said there, Michael. I mean, think about all the pressure that Houston had on like Toronto. I mean, it was persistent, it was constant. So to defend like that essentially for 90 minutes is not easy. And the fact that, again, there were times where they rode their luck and they were fortunate, but overall, the center backs kept the game in front of them. They weren't beaten for pace. No one really kind of got in behind them. And, I thought they did a really professional job. And consider this too. I mean, Shane Long, strong start to the season, and then was out for essentially 12 weeks. He's still, I know he's been back since June or May, whatever it is, but still is kind of working his way back to what he was at the beginning of the year. And Sigurd Rosted, a regular starter last year, not so much this year. I mean, he's really had to sort of fight for playing time. And, he hasn't been a persistent and consistent, performer, up to this point. So, the fact that those three guys kind of like came together and were very cohesive and we're kind of on the same page. And again, in a very difficult place to play. I thought it was a credible job that the back three did, and I think you have to give them all, plenty of kudos.
Right, exactly. And two players also, just before we kind of start to move on from the game, that I wanted to chat about. Henry Wingo, you mentioned him, John, off the top, just his cameo again. A little bit longer this time, more of a 30-ish minute cameo, 40-minute cameo. About 30 minutes, sorry. I thought he looked great. I thought he looked a lot more acclimated to the team. Obviously, look, he's got more time, so that helps. But he made, obviously, the big thing everybody's going to talk about is a pretty key tackle near the end of the game.
Right.
But I thought even his just work with the ball moving forward, I thought he was pretty confident, connected some passes really well. You could see how he's a player that could potentially slot into a starting position in this team should that sort of start to work out, because now you've got a little bit of depth with Gomes, with Rosted, with Long, with O'Neill. Like there's a bit of center back depth now that they can sort of move pieces around. And I think Wingo can fit in pretty well in terms of somebody who can progress the ball from the back.
There's a word there that you use that I think is the key when you talk about the connections. I think that's the thing that's about him. He's a good connector. He's someone who very comfortable in possession, who's very good in terms of getting the ball forward, and he's he strikes me as a very intelligent player, someone who is thinking 2 or 3 moves ahead. And you can kind of see how the game should unfold in front of him before it actually sort of unfolds. And so I think that's what he brings. He just brings a really like a high sort of footballing IQ. And I think we've seen that. And I think, again, with him being so comfortable in possession, it was really important in a game like this when, you're defending and just, repelling wave after wave of attack. You need a guy like that who can serve as a bit of a release valve, who can kind of hold on the ball, give the back three a little bit of time to breathe and reset, and then sort of move forward. So yeah, I think it was, the 30 minutes that he came on for, he was really played a big role in TFC, being able to hold on for that win.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then the last one, we call it maybe the renaissance of Coy Thompson or the coming out party for Coy Thompson, one of the two. But he is now getting regular minutes. He's now a regular part of the rotation. I think we can go beyond calling it like somebody who's stepping in while guys are injured. Like he's clearly now a set part of the core of this team in terms of just being a guy off the bench. I thought he, again, has played incredibly well over the last couple of months in terms of getting his opportunity and really running with it. In terms of, obviously sitting into press conferences and talking to Coy himself, like what are you sensing from him over the last, couple of months in terms of why this step he's been able to take this step and now become a relied on part of the team?
I really think it's been since that Forge game, right? Because he's you've seen him sort of step up in a really big way. And it's just been sort of consistent. And I think it's probably been the best run of form that he's had, at TFC since, making his debut a couple of years ago. What has changed? I think it's just the fact that, that he was given the opportunity while, Alonso Cuellar was ruled out and, the team has been dealing with injuries that, he's had to sort of mature and sort of provide, some steadiness to a team that really needs it. And I think just having that sort of pressure has probably helped him a lot in a big way, because I think he's answered the call. He's been, again, I'll use the word mature, but he's been very mature and composed in his performances compared to like earlier in the season where he looked well off the mark, and even towards the end of last year before he went away on loan to Norway. He seems to have grown up a lot, and I think giving this opportunity and John Herdman essentially saying to him, "Look, we need you now because of Alonso being out and all the injury concerns. This is your time. You want more playing time, you want more responsibility, you want more opportunities. Show us." And I think he's done that, and full credit to him, because at the start of the season, he was someone who I didn't really see playing that big of a role with the club, but he has sort of answered the call in a big way.
So, John, let me ask you: do you think he's played his way into the lineup when some of those injuries, when some guys get healthy?
That's an interesting one, Jeffrey. I don't know. I think when Coelho comes back, I don't necessarily think he goes straight back into the lineup, because obviously will have been, by that time, he will have been out for 2-3 months,
time.
whatever it is.
Yeah, wow.
And usually it takes, a player a couple of weeks to kind of get back into the groove. And the same thing with Brandon Cervania. I mean, he's been out for like a year now. I don't suspect that now that he's back and available again, he's going to walk straight into the starting 11. It might take those guys, a month, maybe more, to get back into the groove. So, in that meantime, that gives Coy even more of an opportunity to show John of, why he deserves to hold on to that spot. But, there's going to be competition for playing time, right? And, before he got injured, I thought Coelho, has had a pretty solid season this year. I like the way that he partnered up with Debbie Flores in the center of midfield. I think he's proven to be a really very good two-way player this year. Can kind of link defense with the attack, and so it's it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think there's a possibility that Coy could remain as the starter. I think he's going to have that chance to prove himself, because they said it's not going to the likes of Cervania and Coelho aren't going to walk straight back into the lineup once they're healthy.
Second
Absolutely.
question. This is from Calcio Alculo. He starts tomorrow. Short starts tomorrow. He's Canadian, and they've got to fill that quota, right? What do we think? 90% chance that Cozy starts or not for the?
I think so. I mean, yeah. I mean, look,
Yeah.
you know,
All signs point to yes.
he's a young man. I mean, I get that playing like twice in whatever it is, 4 or 5 days might be, a lot for like someone who's over the age of 30, like a Lorenzo Insigne who's been battling injuries, or a Kevin Long. But Coy Thompson is still in his young 20s, so I think he can handle even playing, 3 times in 8 days. I don't think that's an issue.
Yeah, a lot of people are thinking about Gavran in goal. I actually think they go Sean John in goal.
I agree
tomorrow. Yeah, right. And you go Richie, Oso, and Kosi.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree.
I just think the question is, do you play Kosi at center back? Because they've been experimenting with him at center back this year. I would prefer not to see that. But
I don't know that I would do that, because I think, I haven't been terribly impressed when he's played back there. I think he's on a solid run of form right now. I don't think you do anything to disrupt that, right, by throwing on playing him out of position.
Yeah, and Turtz is just saying Gavran, also DeAndre. I don't know if he's going to get into this. I think
not after Prince just scored.
Yeah, I think they're going to let Prince gets the goal and let him ride it.
Listen, the Crew rolled with their second string keeper and won Leagues Cup, so let's not discount. Well, we ain't the Crew, but
that's it. Well, there you go. There's
we
your
ain't
answer.
the Crew. Let's just end it right there.
That's an understatement.
Last player I want to talk about, and it was coming, was my favorite, Ami Mabika. I gotta say, I was impressed. The brain fart came early. That one shot where he showed his back to like half of Houston Dynamo and let them shoot from distance. I was worried, but then after that, he did some nice stuff there. I was impressed by Ami Mabika. He looked like a center back, so I got to give him his flowers.
Yeah, I thought he came in and helped them kind of lock things down. Quite well. I don't know that he did enough to earn a start in such a crucial game against Forge.
Please no, never.
Yeah, I don't think it's at that point, but
Nope.
Probably gave John something to think about in terms of if he needs to bring on a defender, for the last 20 minutes, whether someone gets injured or he wants to switch to a back four. You probably give him something to think about in terms of him being a credible option. But so it was nice to see. I mean, Ame is someone who has. It's weird. I mean, when he first was traded to Toronto from Miami, I thought he was outstanding. I mean, he was really showed really solid form, and then after that, it's like he just nosedive off a cliff. I mean, he was just absolutely terrible and became such a liability that even when he was healthy, I mean, Terry Dunfield was playing Michael Bradley at center back last year.
Yep.
So I think there's some winning of trust that he has to do to gain sort of the trust back of the coaching staff. And, this was a good positive step, in the game against Houston. He's not there all the way. I mean, I think the process is still ongoing.
Actually, somebody brought up Charlie Sharp. Then do we have any notes on Charlie's cameo? Because he's obviously got some heat with respect to TFC2. I liked what he was doing out there. He did some nice little hold up stuff. Did he try a shot? I don't know if he did.
No, not really. But he did. Yeah. He did have some hold up moments that were pretty good. Now the end. Now, of course, situation was a little bit different. You're not necessarily. You're not really going to be looking. I mean, if he got a chance off a turnover or on the counter, maybe. But he was out there and is holding the ball up okay. And I think there's starting points. I think as our friend James Grossi has mentioned, that could potentially see him as a potential senior player in the future. But right now, I think you're going to just sort of let him cook in TFC2 for now and see what happens next year. That's kind of more of a next year question, almost, it feels like.
I agree. I mean, I could see him getting invited to preseason camp in January and just to see if he can kind of win himself a position on the senior team. But, I don't think there's any sort of like role for him, even in this game tomorrow.
Well, he can't play like in MLS. He can't, unless they sign him to a first team deal. He can't play again, right?
He can't play again in MLS, but that doesn't apply.
But he could play for Can
Champ. Yeah. So, but as you got to fill roster spots with Canadians, I don't know if it's even valuable at that point.
Right. And I don't know that he's the type of type of player profile that you need for a game like this. I mean, yeah, I mean, he was decent in hold up play, but is that what you want in a game where you need to score and need to win? I really don't think so.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about it, so let's just jump right into it. Feast Cup semi tomorrow, BMO Field.
CNE
TFC
game.
Forge. Big game. Obviously, it is a cup semi, so needless to say. Hamilton will travel well, from what I'm hearing. But in terms of the game, it's 2-1, just in case you all forgot, because this game also can feel like it was a million years ago. 2-1 Forge victory. TFC getting a crucial away goal. Yes, away goals still exist in the footballing world, and it exists here in Canada. So TFC got a crucial away goal. But a couple of things to think about if you're a TFC fan. One, Forge's form in the Canadian Premier League has picked up considerably since we played them in June. In fact, they are now top of the Canadian Premier League currently. They just came off a 0-0 draw against York United at York Lions Stadium. We were actually, the three of us were talking about that game just before we came on air. A game that they could have walked away with 3 points from and actually been quite, I think they would have at that point been 4 or 5 points clear at the top, based on the results this weekend. So this is a team that has picked up form, but a team that also just sold their goal scoring leader in Kwesi Poku to Europe. So, and it just because they sold him and he scored in leg one. But don't sell them short just because they sold their top scoring striker, because they still got the CPL's. I think Terran Campbell's still the CPL's all-time leading goal scorer. I think he is.
Yep.
So you got Terran Campbell back, and you still got Jordan Hamilton.
Chouanier.
You got Chouanier, Borges is still on fire. Like there's guys on form right now at TFC. So there's a lot to be sort of concerned about in terms of how this team is playing. But that said, as John kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, you would think TFC has enough talent in this second leg, especially at home, to be able to pull out a result. But guys, Jeff, maybe I'll start with you. Just a temperature check on how you're feeling about the vibes for this one, because it feels like it should go our way, but we also said that in June.
It feels like a acreage of banana peels to step on, basically. I mean, we were rolling with some serious confidence going into leg one. You and I were both standing within feet of each other, watching whatever the hell that was. I can't. I've got to have some professional distance from this one. On paper, for sure. In my heart, absolutely. But this season has been such a roller coaster. I can't tell you how it's going to go. I mean, I hopefully will be able to tell in the first 20 minutes. I can tell you I'm really excited to go to the CNE early tomorrow. I've got a laundry list of all the Lego minifigures I'm looking for at the Better Living Center. I'm more excited for that than for the game itself, because I've got the fear. I don't know about you guys, but I've got the fear.
John, your thoughts? You'll be in the box for this one.
I'll be in the box. I think if you're TFC, you're feeling, I don't know if confident is the right word, but I think they have to. They're certainly feeling a little bit better about themselves. I mean, when you think about the game against Forge, since then they've won 4 of 6 games. They've back-to-back shutout wins in MLS, one of which was and both on the road against Montreal and against Houston. There seems to be getting back to being that tough team to break down, like they were in the first few weeks of the season. So I think there's reason for optimism here. That said, I mean, Forge is not going to lie down. I mean, they're going to take a great deal of confidence as well because of the way that they bossed that game in a lot of ways in the first leg. And I thought, Kwesi Poku wasn't there, but David Chouanier is, I think, one of the most underrated sort of players in Canadian soccer right now.
Agree.
100%.
And he's a big time Charlie too. He's a big game Charlie.
Absolutely.
Big game player.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you think about all the sort of like massive games where he's come through in Forge, he's always been there. And I think the partnership that he's forged with
Borges.
Borges, thank you. I think that was really impressive. It was something that John Herdman talked about specifically when we were speaking to him today during the pregame press conference. You think about, Jordan Hamilton, who has, big game experience. You'll forgive me. I can't remember the Mexican defender's name that they
Daniel
have.
Parra.
Fantastic.
Underrated signing of the year. Underrated signing of the year.
I think he's probably been one of the best newcomers in the CPL this year.
Yeah.
And it's this is a Forge team that's been together essentially, the core has been together for quite some time now, minus one or two kind of key players, but the core is still there, and it's a well-coached team. I mean, Bobby Smirniotis is not some fly-by-night tactician. He is, a really intelligent manager, and I think he manages to get the best and inspire the most out of his players. So it's going to be a tough test for Toronto, but I do think the Reds will go into this with some confidence, because I think there is a feeling internally that this isn't the same team that it was on July 10th when they lost in Hamilton. Bill Manning is no longer there. There seems to be a rejuvenation of spirits. They seem to have found their tactical sort of identity in terms of being a tough team defensively to break down and just kind of grinding things out. I do think they're going to have to find another level in this game, right? I mean, they can't sort of like do what they did against Montreal and Houston their last, 2 games, or what they did in the Leagues Cup. They're going to have to put the hammer, or attempt to try to put the hammer down a little bit, and really kind of go after Forge and get like up 1 or 2 goals and then really go in for the kill. I don't think it's a game where that they can advance by just kind of squeaking by. They're going to have to sort of outclass Forge a little bit. And that's a bit of a tough task, just considering the quality of the opposition.
Drop the hammer. Yeah. I saw what you did there.
I didn't even think about that.
Oh, wow. Now yeah. There we go.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I don't think this is going to be, I know people are kind of joking, half serious, saying it's going to be 4-0. It ain't going to be 4-0, guys. Like, come on. It wasn't that the first time. It ain't going to be that this time.
That's what they were saying the first time, and look what happened. So there we go.
It will be interesting, because I think, you are taking on a team that, in a lot of ways in the league, at least, Prince Wosu can kind of use his strength, his height, his pace on some center backs. But at Forge, you've got a Malik Alabi Belowu. You've got, they may start Gavin Matusala at the back as well. You got Ashen Yodi Janssen, who just knows where to be at all times. I don't think this is not, in a sense, you're looking at I won't call it MLS level back line, but you're looking at a team that could probably compete against some MLS teams, in terms of that defensive structure. And then when you think about the midfield, and you're right, John, the core of that team has been together for so long, right? They've been together since 2019. They've won championships. They've won massive games. They've gone down to Central America, won big games. This is a team that knows how to win. Right now, for all the things we were saying nice about TFC, the one thing this group together does not know how to do together is win big games. They still haven't figured that out yet. And that is one thing TFC need to be worried about. I do think, though, look, you've got your captain and your top scorer who can play free, because they don't have a game on Saturday. So, from that perspective, you might see a little bit more of a freer team in that regard. I just wonder, maybe we could sort of talk about the fact that, if they can get through this game and get to a cup final, whether they play Pacific or the Whitecaps, probably going to be the Whitecaps at this point. Is that like did they have this on the board as a check mark? Like, okay, get to a cup final. Great. It just, that confidence level goes up another notch, and it really serves them well into this final push to try to get into the playoffs. Because I think if they can get a result here, if they can get through to the cup final, I think it does them a world of good in terms of just vibes, in terms of just being able to win a big game together as a group.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think it would, as you said, it would do them, their confidence, a world of good just to get to the final. And it would certainly help them with their playoff push. At the same time, it complicates matters for them, because it's another fixture, and it's, whoever they play, they're going to have to go out west. And if I remember correctly, the game comes between a road game between Colorado and then another road game against Chicago. So
Yes,
that's
correct.
three road games during what, an 8-day period.
Yeah, we have to travel west, stay west,
Yikes.
come east.
Changing
Yeah.
time zones,
Mhm.
playing on different types of surfaces again. So you can't help but wonder, would in some way would it adversely affect the playoff push, because that's asking a lot from a team who, and again, they're in a tight battle for the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference. I mean, the 7 teams that are directly below them are all within 7 points, and they all have games in hand. I think New England has 3 games in hand, as a matter of fact. So,
And they're on a heater too. Yep.
yeah, and now you're asking, if Toronto gets by Forge tomorrow, now you're asking them to play like another game on an opposite coast between two, what's going to be two very difficult road games. I think then you're really going to see, what John Herdman is made of in terms of tactical acumen, rotation sort of process, and just
Yep.
sort of management of his roster, because that's going to be a really, really trying period for the Reds if they get through to the final.
I agree. My question is, what's more important to you guys? I'm camp champ. I'm V Cup all the way. If I had to choose, I'm V Cup all the way.
I don't know that it's either or for them. I think they seriously think they see it as they have a serious shot at qualifying for the playoffs and winning the Canadian Championship. And I think anything less than
As they
that,
should.
and I think anything less than that is going to be honestly seen as a disappointment by them, as a season that's kind of somewhat fell short of expectations. So I think they're going to go for it. I think if they get through this game and they get through to the final, John will find a way to sort of navigate that sort of tricky part of the fixture list. But it's not. From my perspective, I don't get the sense that they're looking at it as an either or perspective. They want both of them. They're committed to finding a way to navigate through that.
Yeah,
LFG.
my answer previous stands, right? Like, you win this game, you win a cup. Now this team has won something together. You know what I mean? Like that can really forge a relationship, even with the stuff that happened last year. And I know we're not talking about last year, but
Look
we have
at
to
you
talk about
forging
last
a
year.
relationship. All these puns are hilarious. Bring the hammer down, forge some relationships.
Yeah, I know.
My
We're
goodness.
just all
Yeah.
secret forge agent here. But like, just in terms of the just winning a cup for this club right now, right? Winning the Canadian Championship is big. I know it may not. It's big for everybody in this room probably, and all you watching and listening as a podcast. Probably for the general fan base, they'll be like, okay, what? But I think winning a cup for this club right now is massive. Like, getting to the playoffs will also be massive in a way. But I think winning a cup, just getting some silverware into the trophy case again, is going to be big, and I think they will go for it big time to try to win that cup. Plus, I mean, of course, I think somebody mentioned it in the comments, right? The Champions Cup spot is important to this club, right? Getting back to continental competition, I think, for this club is something that a lot of people have been talking about for quite some time. Okay, so we got a few minutes, so we'll keep going here. Just really quickly, actually, I'll ask you guys one more question before we move on. One last question. If Toronto FC don't get through, is this the biggest or most embarrassing maybe failure in club history if they aren't able to get through Forge?
No, this team's a mess. This team's a mess. I mean, I think, especially this season, because this season is sort of compounded all and sort of exacerbated all the issues. I can't call it a super failure. I think it speaks volumes as to just how well coached Forge is and how close they are in terms of quality to what we would consider the upper tier of an MLS side. I mean, you almost said it yourself when you were talking about their defenders. This Forge are no slouches. They're a really good team. We're well within a decade before we start seeing CPL teams beat MLS squads on the regular in the Canadian Championship if we aren't there already. And no, I don't think it's a disaster. I think last year was a disaster. Getting to this point is already a victory for this squad. So put that panic button in the closet and put it under wraps for the season. Yeah.
I think if they don't sort of get past Forge, it'll be a failure, but I don't think it'll be the biggest failure, like, in the club history or however it was you worded it. I think back to the 2018 season where, they entered that season as the defending MLS Cup champions and they didn't even make the playoffs. Okay, they came within a breadth of winning the CONCACAF Champions League final. But I think for me, that was I look at that as kind of like the biggest sort of disappointment, failure, whatever you want to call it. I mean, a team that was so good a year before, somehow found a way to be just nowhere near at the same level the next year and didn't even qualify for the playoffs. That to me I think would be probably the biggest failure in club history in terms of on-field results.
Turtle will think losing to the Puerto Rico Islanders in Champions League.
Oh, but that was so long ago.
That was different TFC. That was a different TFC.
Yeah,
that was nightmare TFC back then. Okay, quickly, DC United at home on Saturday. Just taking a look at the standings.
We need to do some kind of like magic or something. They'll destroy Forge tomorrow. No need to discuss terrible failures and bring it into existence.
Man,
so we've all got to do
you think
incantations
later. Fourth, you thought they were going to beat them 5-0 at Tim Hortons Field. I'm just nah, buddy.
Yeah. You're really working towards paying for that dinner, aren't you? When it all comes true.
Remember, you still got lunch. You still owe me lunch, buddy. All right, just looking at the standings here. Toronto FC still in 8th, now sole possession of 8th on 33 points. Orlando City above us, 1 point ahead. We got some help this weekend in terms of Orlando City losing. Montreal got waxed, and Atlanta lost. And then, of course, Philadelphia, although they weren't playing in the league, they were playing in the League's Cup third place game. They got their game midweek. So we'll see how they do there. But they're right now sitting on 27 points. DC right now sitting last in the East, but they're on 26. So really from like last to basically 9th is 2 points. So,
wow.
Like from that perspective, there's that sort of race to get back up into the wild card spots is going to be tight, and it's going to be hairy all the way. And we take on one of those teams on Saturday against DC with no Jonathan Osorio and with no Federico Bernardeschi because of some indiscipline in the game. And John, you had mentioned it that these were 2 yellow cards they just didn't need to take, right? Like these were 2. I think were they not both for dissent?
Yep.
Yeah.
One as like, and I don't know how he managed to do this, but Federico Bernardeschi getting the yellow card as, just prior to being like subbed out of the game. So I wasn't even.
Because I was wondering, was it because he was taking too long to get off the field, like the new 10-second rule, or no? That was literally just.
It's Ted Uncle. I mean, only the shadow knows for sure, but they were both for dissent. Stop.
Well, so anyway, you go into that game. Yes, DC are last, but technically there are 4 teams on the same amount of points as them. It just comes down to goal difference. So really, you go into that game without your top scorer, without your captain, and we're not sure if Lorenzo Insigne is going to play. Probably will, but we're not sure at this point. Other than stop Benteke, are there keys to victory here for DC United? Right now it's gonna have to look like a must-win game, to try to put some space between you and these sort of bottom teams that are trying to catch you and flag you down.
As I said before, it's this is one of the teams that they have to beat because DC is one of the teams that's trying to chase them down. So they can't afford to lose points now, and especially lose it to Eastern Conference rivals who are below them in the table. Things are too tight. And
100%.
Benteke I think he's got 17 goals or something like that. And the next top scorer for DC, I think they each have 3 goals. So, if they can sort of somehow negate the Belgian, then I think that goes a long way to slowing down DC.
But isn't it like we play DC United all the time, and then one of their kids pops out of nowhere? First there's Griffin Yao, then there's Ku Di Pietro. So one of their 17-year-old kids we haven't heard out of their academy pops up and scores a goal in the 90s or something like that.
Scores a brace.
And if you do remember the last DC United game, it was a game that we had 3 points and threw it away with Lorenzo Insigne, Federico Bernardeschi getting sent off.
Gomes
And
too.
Well, we won't have
yeah,
to worry
and
about that
Gomez
one.
getting sent off. Yeah. So
Mhm.
there is a little bit of stuff that TFC need to work out against DC United on the weekend. But as you mentioned, it is essentially it's all these now almost. At least these Eastern Conference games are going to be 6-pointers at this point, right? In terms of putting some distance between yourself and the bottom teams and making sure you can creep up, because as much as you can get caught, you could also potentially catch Orlando City here and move yourself back up to
Mhm.
7th, which then gets you a home playoff game if you can maintain that. Now, of course, as mentioned, every team below us has at least a game in hand on us. Most have
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
So again, it goes to the point of needing to really take advantage of these home games. There's a few down the stretch. You right now you can't afford to lose to DC United. You shouldn't have lost to DC United in the first place, but they really can't at this point. And in someone, and this is going to be an interesting one because someone is going to have to step up, right? With no Bernadeschi, with no Oso, there's somebody's going to have to step up. And we don't know what the status of Lorenzo Insigne is, so I'll leave that to the side for a moment because obviously if he's playing, he's the obvious answer. But if there's one player that you think could step up in a big moment for TFC in that game, out of the probable starters that are going to be in that game, who would that player be? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, gentlemen. But Jeff, if you got one, I'll start with you.
I mean, probably Owosu. You know, that to me is the obvious answer. You know, he's broken his duck, so you know, hopefully he starts tomorrow. He looks good out there. Maybe gets another goal and goes in. Colin saying Derek Etienne Jr. again. It's a good shout. Yeah, I mean, pick your poison there. Etienne, Owosu, maybe even DeAndre. Certainly that crop of forwards. Richie as well. That's a great shot. Richie's been kind of, you know, he's still doing Richie things, but even in my guest hit on that Dynamo podcast preceding the game, I was saying Richie would probably tell you this has been an off year for him domestically, club form. His form's all over the place. So, you know, having Richie sort of round into like proper murder ball Richie at this time would bode pretty well for us going into this stretch. So I think Richie's my shout actually.
You stole my thunder, Nisker, because I was going to say Larea. I think he's, you know, he has 1 goal in 5 games this season. And look, he's been out for the majority of the season due to injury. And then it took him extra time to get back because then he had like international commitments. You know, and since he's come back, I think he's looked fairly good. I mean, he scored the winner against Montreal at Stade Saputo last month. But I think there's got to be more there's got to be more final product. Like there's got to be more goal scoring shots. There's got to be more goal scoring opportunities. There's got to be more goals. There's got to be more assists. He's very dangerous. I mean, absolutely. But I think the final product is somewhat lacking. And so if he can kind of step up and produce with tangible sort of end results in this game, something that he hasn't really done this season, then I think that would be an absolutely massive boost for TFC in such a hugely important game against DC.
Agreed.
Yeah, that was my guy.
Richie's the guy.
Somebody said here, gotta say, Richie with the dark arts. Go win some penalties.
Yeah.
You know, do your thing, right? Because you're gonna need it. We're gonna need it down the stretch, whether it happens on Saturday or happens in the next 7 games. Not putting cup finals and potential cup games into that mix yet. But you look at the last 7, 5 are home. Right. So there's a pride at trying to win points at home. That's a big talking point for John Herdman. Well, here it is, you know, bag those home points, you know, because you have the Rapids away. The Rapids are going to be no easy test away, you know, and then you have Chicago, another 6-pointer right on the road.
Yeah.
So if you think about it right now, you know, this is going to be a tough schedule with the Crew in there. You always, you know, Red Bulls are always tough. And then we got Inter Miami at the end of the season. So interesting times.
It's not an easy schedule. I mean,
no, it is not.
There's a lot of challenges there. I mean, they've got to play, I think, 3 of the top 4 in like the East right now. Because I think the Red Bulls are mixed in there as well.
Yeah, I think they're 4th.
Yeah, they're in 4th.
Yeah. So it's, and like it's a tough road game against Colorado. It's a tough road game against Chicago. This is not going to be an easy run by any
No.
means, so.
And you don't think Chris Armas has this one circle on the calendar a little bit?
absolutely.
Just,
For sure
thinking
he
about
does.
this one,
For sure he does.
I get you in my house in the altitude.
Mm-hmm.
Get to run you down. Yeah, no, this is good. Hey, but you know what? Like, it's a lot funner to run these shows when they're in a playoff hunt than being 15th and being literally like 15 points out of it.
Yeah, just a smoking wreck of a club, 100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a lot more fun to write about too. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I would imagine. Speaking of writing, as we just wrap up the show here, John, TFC Republic going strong as normal. Anything you just want to talk about in terms of what you have coming up on the site?
Well, if you go up to the site now, we've got like in-depth coverage of like the Forge game tomorrow. So we're kind of leaning heavily into that. I'm trying to think what we got coming up this week. Yeah, it's pretty much just all focusing on Forge and then turning our attention to DC United after that. So there'll be a lot of good stuff. If I, don't want to sound too much like a commercial, but if you've never checked out TFC Republic, then I highly recommend it. It's pretty affordable. We have like 1 week free trial if you're leery about splashing down the cash. So to sign up for a free trial and check it out first if you want to do that.
Guys, it's $50. Okay, you're willing to pay $50 to go to Hamilton. You paid $50 to go to Hamilton. You can pay $50 to get the.
We're opening
the
that
OG.
Pandora's box again. There's this is a huge argument. People don't like $50. I'm like $50.
You got
is
$50
pocket
to
change in
give to the
2024,
OG of TFC reporting.
100%.
And of course, top stuff always from John Molinaro. So, John, again, thank you for joining the pod. We really appreciate it. Let's wrap this thing up. Thank you for tuning in to another Toronto Till I Die episode. Follow us on all the socials. Google search Toronto Till I Die. You'll find us on the pods. You'll find us on the socials. Rate, review, like, both on YouTube and wherever you get your pods. For John Molinaro, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mike Newell. We'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
And wait, and baby, I'm TFC till I die.